Welcome back, everyone. My name is Janice Malillo, the host of Stories That Inspire Us, the author series. Wow, today I have on an amazing guest. And before I introduce him, I just want to let everyone know, of course, that we are also simulcasting through the Wisdom audio app. So thank you to everyone currently hopping on. Today's guest is an author, of course, and he's written several books. And let me just say, he has been in the libraries and broadcasting realm since 1980, which was the year I graduated from high school. And he's written several books, but the book that we are going to chat about today, and I said to Ed, you know, we hear a lot about women talking about, breast cancer and these different diseases that comes up for it, but you never really hear from a man's point of view, from the male point of view. He is the author of the book, A Guy's Guide to Throat Cancer, The Do's and Don'ts of Recovery. Welcome, Ed Rossman. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you and share a little bit of insight from your story.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that as well. You know, and as you said, there's a little gap there as far as guys reading about stories like this about throat cancer, but there are quite a few of them affected by it. And they say there's actually, it's a 50-50 chance of survival. And it's a guy's guide to throat cancer, but there's also do's and don'ts for recovery as a subtitle. And that's what I hope the guys who read it pick up on the do's and don't do the don'ts, which I learned from firsthand experience.
And that's what I really loved about, number one, eloquently written, easy to read, but, you know, I got to tell you, it did tug on my heartstrings, but you laid it out in such a way where you really gave everybody kind of the backdrop of what was happening in your life. And so much happened in a very short amount of time. Your sister, your mom. Bring us back to where you were, because I think that is really important. The crust of which starts your story.
They were the catalyst. My mom had passed away in early 2017, and then my sister developed what a bad condition, which eventually we found was a brain tumor. It really got bad in August of 2017, and she was just very dizzy, and then mentally not with it. And she was a bit overweight. Doctors were thinking, and she only had one kidney, so people were thinking it was a kidney condition and various other things. And she bounced around to all sorts of nursing homes and hospitals, and trying to get the diagnosis, and with the insurance that was she was covered by, it was a battle. It was a bad learning curve. But the what happened was in November, I was visiting her, and I had just shaved off. I had a beard at one time, and I had just shaved off my beard maybe 2 weeks before. And then I noticed on November 3rd that wow, I really have muscles in my neck here. I didn't realize I was so bulked out. And I looked at it closer. I said, wait a second, why is the muscle only here? And it was a lump that was I thought it was swollen glands at first. So what happened was I went to the doctor first thing on Monday, because if it was swollen glands, I wanted penicillin or whatever they give you for that. So because of my sister's autoimmune system being down, we knew at that point she had a brain tumor. It was down, and I wanted to just get it fixed right away. And they took a look at it, and they said, no, that's not swollen glands. And we did CAT scans and various other things. Long story short, on November 30th, I had the tumor removed, and then they did the biopsy of it, and they said, no, it's cancerous. We're going to have to put you through the regular cancer regime. And well, Betty passed on in December, and almost thankfully, I'm glad she didn't have to suffer that long, and it was very quick for her. But my family was all upset. Now I had cancer, so everybody was upset. And when I left work, I was taking FMLA leave. My supervisor told me, hey, Ed, do you know about CaringBridge? Because they had known what a headache it was trying to keep everybody in the loop with my sister. I said, no, I never heard of it. CaringBridge.org is a great free platform that families or patients can create a page for themselves and then journal and let people know how their progress is going, which is great. It saves people a lot of
Mhm.
problems with, like, trying to tell, hey, would you tell somebody that Eddie's sick or whatever? And then how messages, like the old phone game where people try to pass on phone messages, gets totally distorted sometimes.
Sure.
Caring Bridge helps against that, and it helps the people who love you. If every time you do a comment, they'll comment back to you and say, hey, hang in there, buddy. Have you thought about this song? Whatever. And so I use Caring Bridge to keep everybody in the loop, and the journal entries for that became the framework for my book.
Yeah, and when you were describing that, of course, I don't have a copy of your book, but I have a digital copy of it, of course. And do you have a perfect. Thank you so much for showing that. And of course, our listeners can't see it, but definitely go to YouTube later on because it will be up there. It really is, again, coming from a man's point of view, you're finding out about, your sister, your mom, you finding about your tumor, then it's cancerous, and starting the process. Like Caring Bridge to me seemed like such a great, as you mentioned, such a great place to keep everybody well informed, and journaling out your story in your words, in your perspective, not to really, what's the word I'm looking for? Not to like, oh, it's not a woe is me, and I want to be very clear.
No.
No, it's really such a wonderful thing that you are able to comfortably, safely journal your thoughts and feelings to keep your loved ones and your friends completely abreast of everything is going on. And again, I think with the treatments, as you describe them in your book, everything from the food tube to the radiation treatments, the chemo, there is so much we don't know, and especially for men. You mentioned, of course, the subtitle, the do's and don'ts, and don't do the don'ts because you've been there, done it.
Yeah. The Cambridge is great for that opportunity, but the book, as a librarian, had to study about primary sources and secondary sources, and the Caring Bridge were the primary sources. I mean, that day, this is what I was feeling about, and not only you can write it out, but you can also upload music videos, and I'm a big music fan, and the title of the book came when I was talking about my radiation treatments, and I played an AC/DC video called Thunderstruck, which was it's a rockin' song, but it had a military montage. The video part of it was battleships blowing off cannons, jets shooting rockets, and everything at targets, very violent. And I wrote in there, I hope the radiation is doing this to my cancer cells. And one of my librarian friends, Audrey, said, oh, Ed, you're such a guy. And after I was done, when I was back at the library, a lot of people told me that, oh, we're so glad you're better, but we're going to miss those posts. Those were funny and inspiring. And I tried to be, because of the shock of my sister and mom the previous year. I tried to keep everybody more upbeat, and that brought out of myself that motivation, inspiring attitude, can't stay down, and that probably helped me through defeating cancer.
I would definitely have to agree with you with that, especially with the motivation, like your mindset. I would assume on some days, obviously it was better than others. And having that, to keep it funny and inspiring, and to uplift those who are watching your journey, like a learning experience for everyone.
Yeah, and that's what I tried to include in the book. Every day there'd be 10 or 12 posts, but I've got 30 some journal entries. Once again, divided into part A, the primary source, the 1 or 2 paragraphs that I was maybe able to eke out, letting them know what kind of a Bible reading I had read about that day that was I found was applicable to my situation, or a music video, or whatever. The basically that's part A, and then part B is the extended version of that day when I had a chance to reflect on it. It's the secondary source. Usually that's in library land, that would be written by somebody else about the primary. But for me, I took it, well, let me explain what a PEG 2 actually stands for, the PEG and IMRT and various other things that were like, more scientific. The extended version of a song is usually much cooler than the original song. The Shones' Gimme Shelter is like, if they've got a long version of that with a long intro. And I said, oh man, when I heard that, I really like that. And in fact, the extended version of the Chambers Brothers song, Time Has Come Today, I mentioned in my journal. On the radio, it's only 4 minutes long. On the extended version, it's 14 minutes long, which was exactly the amount of time that I needed to go in every day and clean the PEG tube. For those of you who are not familiar with, the PEG tube is something that people with throat cancer use in order to take in nutrition, because the throat is so burned from radiation that you need a boost or an Ensure type of thing. I had a different quality because of the medical condition, but something similar, high caloric, high protein type of a mixture, poured it into my chest every day, a couple times a day. But it needed to be cleaned every day because it's a gaping wound there. And I didn't like the process. Nobody likes cleaning their own wounds. And I really, I had people who would do it for me, but not every day. And I just, no, I'll do it. But I played the Chambers Brothers, and it took me 14 minutes to clean it. And after that, it was like, okay, good. That's actually, it helped me a lot. And that's one of the themes in my book that I talk about is music is a great motivator and a distractor. It distracts you sometimes from some of the ugliness of cancer that has to be faced and dealt with in order to go through the process. But it's a good distractor. And I always encourage people who are getting their diagnosis, create a mixtape. Find the favorite tunes that you like, the most energetic, upbeat workout tunes that you like. And even if you don't have one of those, try and get one, or get a buddy to help you assemble one, so that when you're having the bad days, you could listen to that, and it'll help you pull it out of the depression or the lethargic reaction you're having to the chemotherapy or whatever. It helps you go through it better.
And so eloquently said, I can't even imagine going through something like that, yet you still had this desire in you to really showcase what you were going through, but really, as you said, related it back to music, it being your motivator and your distractor. When you look back at your journey, what is perhaps one thing you want to get across, specifically to men, of course, because this is a guy's guide to throat cancer? What do you want to get across to that, to the man who perhaps just was diagnosed?
Basically, don't do it alone. I mean, guys are known to be stoic and independent, and they can deal a lot with pain, and that's all well and good. But our civilization has progressed because the caveman learned the value of the tribe for protection, for learning new things, for feeding each other, all those different types of things. So don't stay isolated in the caveman. I joke around about, I'm trying to describe the book, or describe cancer from a man cave instead of a hospital room. And that's all true. But basically, don't try and go it alone. Accept the help of your caregivers and your friends. And that's one of the good things CaringBridge is good for keeping everybody in contact and being able to throw you a bit of encouragement. Don't try and go it alone, and don't try and ignore it. And then, of course, there's 3 main guy qualities that you could use to your advantage, that guys are inherently they have as part of their genes. Discipline. Usually it's the guy who's a disciplinarian in the family. Now you have to discipline yourself to follow doctor's orders, to take the medicine when you're supposed to clean your wounds, to keep the equipment top notch. Strength. You need your sleep. Don't be dozing and wasting time just like watching TV. Try to get as much sleep as you can, because oftentimes sleep is interrupted by, in my case, wearing a food tube. It's not very comfortable to sleep with. You need your sleep in order to keep your strength up, and use that strength for learning. Learn more about your condition. Be ready for questions. Have the strength to ask your doctors the who, what, when, and where questions. Who's going to be doing this treatment? When do I have to do it? All those different types of questions. Brainstorm medical questions if you have to, and that takes strength. It's not easy to do, but you have to push yourself to get ready for that 10-minute time frame that you're going to have with your oncologist. Because I hate to say it, even though my guy was great, he was rushed. He had 40 other people to see that day, and I wanted to be always prepared, and I still am always prepared with any doctor, and my dad's doctor, and anybody else who I have to work as a caregiver for, to be able to probe and push and learn about the different types of conditions that they have, and what the best treatments are, and what's the most efficient way, and not to mention the financial things all go along with that.
Sure.
And then there's, of course, attitude. Attitude is guys have a kind of a humor. We can have guys with a cocky sense of humor will be the ones who try to survive the best. You may find them annoying sometimes at the Thanksgiving dinners or whatever. Oh God, that's Uncle Ed again. He's telling one of those jokes or whatever. But a cocky sense of humor has pulled many a man out of darkness. And just watch your language, your body language, your phrases, the words that you used. I actually, one of my journal entries says I'm using the word different instead of difficult. Because if you think about it, when you say things like eating is different rather than eating is difficult, you could see the positive connotations there that really will help get you well. Showering's different. Showering's difficult. You don't want to share that downer with other people, and you want to keep yourself up. So I banned myself from using the word difficult. I just said, no, it's different. Things are different.
I was just going to ask you the question, and you already answered it for me, but I was going to ask, what did you learn from this? And you've learned so much, obviously, but I love how you just described it was difficult for you, but you switched the language you were telling yourself, or perhaps the story of how it really felt. And no, I'm not going to use that word. This is different. Yes, it may be difficult. Difficult's out the window. It's different. But what can you share is something in addition that you learned about your journey?
Well, in addition, if you look at this, the cover of my book, the dartboard represents chemotherapy and how I discuss that. I was on a dart team, so that came natural as far as describing the dartboards and different types of dartboards and things. The rockets, I explained that with the radiation. The weights for hydration and exercise, keeping your strength up. And then the rocking guitars keep your energy and your motivation going. But then they're all on the scaffolding of the cross, all on faith. And I was lucky enough, this was before COVID, and before all the churches streamed their masses just about. What I did was I was lucky enough to have a book called The Word Among Us, and that had daily mass readings. And I would read that every day just to read, I wasn't a daily churchgoer, but I was bored and I was facing death. So I was going to say, okay, I'm going to read this and see what I can get out of scriptures. And there were a lot of good things. And I went through during the Lenten season. Lent for Catholics is a very powerful time. It's a time of discipline, and it ends with the resurrection of the Lord. And so even though there's some terrible, and so the passion of the Lord is terrible. He's gone through his agony in the garden. we're going through our agony in the garden when you have cancer, you have bad cancer condition. That the garden is life. And when you have good health, life truly is a garden of Eden in many ways. You may be poor, you may be rich, but at least you're breathing and you're able to experience the beauty of the nature. And at the end, and long story short, some people, like, the agony of the garden, that's their final stop. But I'm hopeful. I'm always been faithful, and I was able to pass that on to a lot of my colleagues through Caring Bridge, and now I do it by talking to men's groups and being on podcasts like this.
Oh, that is so wonderful. What is in the future for Ed? In other words, perhaps a second book?
Oh, she looks hopeful. She said, "Oh, a second book." I've thought about that as well, and yes, I'm thinking about it. Except I'm not going to make it as targeted. I tell you the title, but I don't want it robbed. But
Right.
I am thinking of a scripture-based book dealing with sickness in general, because a lot of people have said, "Oh, that's Ed, you've narrowed things too much." Throat cancer. Actually, it was oropharyngeal cancer, but I didn't want that for the title of my book. And then it's is it for guys only? No, a lot of the things in here, I think you'll agree, Janice, it's for
Right.
women as well.
Mhm.
It's going, and it's really going, a lot of the concepts and a lot of the things that I talk about are universal in any kind of treatment for COVID, for MS, for recovering from a stroke,
Mhm.
any really crucial medical thing. A lot of the things in there about sleep, about nutrition, and the various other things that I've talked about, music, are important to go through. I take a very holistic picture of working through medical problems. So what I've done is I've been thinking about it, but frankly, this year, that was my New Year's resolution, and it's August now as we're recording this,
Mhm.
and I've laid out the framework of it, but I just haven't been able to get to it. I've been busy as a caregiver, and I love that role, but that eats up a lot of time, and it's just something that this will inspire me once again to be able to do that. But for doing a book, it takes a lot. I was lucky that I was able to retire in August of 2018. And from there, I had a lot more free time. And that's when I developed the idea of the book. Instead of giving a long PDF file for my
Mhm.
friends from the Caring Bridge, I said, no, there's a vacuum there of needed reference material and resource material for people who are going through cancer. And that guys are the worst. And you've had all sorts of journal entries here talking about football, the Lord of the Rings, and various other things. So why not just combine everything and make that a gift to the world, which I've been able to do. But luckily, that was at a time when I was a little bit more freer. There were less people who needed me. Now there's a few more people in my life that also need my services. So eventually, I might get around to doing that. I don't want to say thankfully, but actually, unfortunately, throat cancer is going to be around with us for a long time.
Mhm.
It's been around for a long time. General Grant, U.S. Grant, he had throat cancer. He died of throat cancer from smoking too many cigars during the Civil War. And there's a resurgence of the cigar activity, I think, in the last 10 years. And it's going to catch up to some people somewhere down the line. Even, who was it? Edward James Olmos, the guy, Lieutenant Castillo from Miami Vice, he just came out in May saying that he had been battling throat cancer for a year. And I don't want to use the words to describe it because he was a very colorful language in describing how he went through his. And luckily, knock on wood, that he did survive. But it's going to be around for a while. So this book will be able to be useful for people. And the free time I have for literature kind of oriented
Mhm.
activities, I'll be able to do, like, good, just talking with this book. The next book, yeah, that would be nice, but we'll see. Right now, this book still needs more exposure. There's 50,000 cases a year. And as I said, if you don't catch it in time, it's only like a 50-50 chance that you'll for the survival rate. And if this can like push some people like, on the positive side of that, that would be good. And not to mention the spiritual side, give them a little bit more rebirth of their faith. And with the prayers in there that are kind of obscure, they're not like, everyday prayers you hear at church. It'll make people reflect on things, and that'll help hopefully power them up as well to kick the cancer out of the body, the mean old cancer, as I describe it in my book.
Yes. And, as I'm looking back over my notes, of course, I could be chatting for an hour here. I had no idea the extent of how many cases per year. Like, to me, that is just so astounding.
Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan, he's had it. Eddie Van Halen and Eddie Money both died of it within the last year or so, year and a half. Yeah, there's all sorts of people. Michael Douglas, the actor, he survived, but he's had it. And if you see recent pictures of him, you see how skinny he is. And same thing with Lieutenant Castillo. It's just like, yeah, there's a variety of people who catch it, and then they're like, they make it through or they don't. But there's a lot of people, and it's always like, America's got a lot of smokers out there, and I was one of them too. And it's just like, it's other viruses and things like that that can cause it. So we'll see how that progresses. And but what I've been doing, the next step for me is I've been talking locally to local church groups about the book, men's groups, men's prayer groups, and things of that nature. That's very rewarding. I love being in front of people. I was a teacher at Kent State for a long time, as well as being a librarian in Lakewood and Shaker Heights, Ohio. And I just like talking in front of people. The screens are great. Don't get me wrong. I love this, but the in front of people is really cool too. And I may do a podcast down the line. As I told you, I think I was doing this is almost a research thing for me to learn best practices on how people organize and develop their own podcasts and all that type of thing. As a radio broadcaster, I produced a couple of long-running specialty programs, and I know the difficulty is finding guests, finding topics each week. It's not a difficulty. It's different. It can be time-consuming. So I'm trying to learn as much as I can before I jump into that.
That is so excited. And by the way, Ed, I know a really good podcast virtual assistant, booking and marketing manager. Hello, right here.
Yeah. That'd be able to help me shoulder the burden a little bit more.
Absolutely.
That's what you're for. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited for you. I would love that. Besides the point, I think that you're starting a podcast at some point and, going further, going deeper into your story and helping men who are, faced with this disease that can really just not make your day too bright. But your story inspires me, and I hope that anyone who can, of course, view this later on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, or of course, Stories That Inspire Us is also on Amazon Music and iHeartRadio. Wherever you listen to your podcast, know that your voice has the power to share, but not only share, but inspire others. Ed, I want to thank you so much for being here today. Before we sign off, can you let our listeners and viewers know where they can connect with you further?
Yeah, I was just about to mention, for obviously the book's on Amazon, and you can go there and look inside the book. So you get more of a grasp of what the backstory was and feel for the writing. Facebook and Instagram, I update 3 times a week. Guy's Guide to Throat Cancer. And I usually have scripture readings and or pieces of the book. Possibly I might upload a music video. And notices today, I just got another one today about head and neck from the Head and Neck Cancer Alliance. about a free Zoom meeting coming up in August 21st, I think, but which I'm going to post for my followers there. And that's the best way to reach me. Or you could send me email at erossman74@yahoo.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that information, Ed. And of course, I will make sure all of his information is in the show notes. Please go ahead to Amazon and download his book. And please don't forget to leave a review. I know that he would appreciate it. Ed, thank you again so much for being here today. And thank you to all of our amazing live listeners currently on the Wisdom audio app. My name is Janice Malillo, the host of Stories That Inspire Us, the author series, truly inspired by Ed's story. Thank you so much, everyone, and we shall see you again real soon. Bye for now.